Hi guys, we're going to do notes for today on behavior perspectives focus on therapy, how they approach therapy. Okay, so we know that for behavior therapy, therapy applies to the learned principles to get rid of the unwanted behavior. So they think that some disorders, not all, are related to a learned behavior. Okay, and that we can use learning principles to try to eliminate some of these unwanted behaviors. Okay, so for example, okay, could a maladaptive symptom be an example of a conditioned response? And if yes, how could the conditioning be addressed? So both classical and operant conditioning are processes that lead to learning. So classical conditioning, we know, pairs two stimuli, while operant conditioning pairs behavior and response. So classical is going to work with a non-voluntary response. Operant is going to work with voluntary behaviors. So this is something you might work on, use to deal with a phobia or anxiety responses. Okay, so what they do is they use classical and operant conditioning and they apply it to counter conditioning. So it pairs your trigger stimulus, let's say a spider, if somebody is arachnophobic, with a new response that is incompatible with fear. Okay, so example, chronic bedwetters. Child sleeps on the liquid sensitive pad connected to alarm. Moisture on the pad triggers the alarm, waking the kid up, and with sufficient repetition, the kid's going to associate relaxing their bladder with waking up, and it'll stop bedwetting. Okay, so we know psychodynamic expects the problem to subside as people gain insight into their unconscious and unresolved tensions. Humanistic expect people to diminish as people get in touch with their feelings. And behaviorists doubt the healing power of self-awareness. They assume that problem behaviors are actually problems that need to be addressed as such. Okay, so let's talk about some more counter-conditioning techniques. Okay, so we had exposure therapy and aversive conditioning. So exposure is really great, again, with phobias. So it was originally developed by Mary Cover Jones, and later Joseph Wallach kind of built it up a little bit. But they expose people to what they'd normally try to avoid and escape. Okay, so again, really good with phobias. So what they do is they use systematic desensitization. So you can't be both anxious and relaxed. Okay, so if you're slowly exposed to what makes you anxious in a very relaxing scenario and nothing bad happens, you're not going to be scared. Okay, and you'll eventually be able to handle it. So virtual reality exposure therapy is great at offering exposure for a technique when fear is, when what they're afraid of is really expensive or difficult or really embarrassing to recreate. So if somebody's afraid of flying, we're not going to slowly expose them to flying over and over and over again. Flying is expensive. So what we can do is, put them in a simulation where virtual reality makes them feel like they're in an airplane, like they are flying, because then then we can build up to maybe a real plane, because flying is expensive. Maybe not right now because of the virus, but in general, it's expensive. So what you ask a patient to do for exposure therapy is you have them name a scenario that would make them anxious, and then they have to create like a hierarchy of those scenarios. So if they're afraid of spiders, seeing a spider 50 feet away might be at the bottom of their hierarchy, whereas a spider near their foot, a spider in their house, a spider on their hand, and they slowly build up to like their worst case scenario, and then you slowly, starting at the bottom of their hierarchy, expose them to it and then build up. Okay. So aversive conditioning. So in this case, the goal is substituting a negative aversive response for a positive one. So this is great for addiction. So they use a lot of aversive conditioning with addicts or people who have just behaviors they don't want to anymore. So like chewing on fingernails, they would put a nasty tasting polish on your fingernails so when you stick your hand in your mouth to bite your fingernails, it tastes disgusting and you spit it out. And eventually you associate that disgusting flavor with chewing on your nails and find that disgusting as well, and theoretically you'll stop. So systematic desensitization, you're trying to get people used to not avoiding things. In aversive conditioning, you want them to avoid it because the behavior is not desirable. So the problem with this is that people will remember that they just had nail polish on. So this works a little bit better with kids, but if, an adult will remember, oh, I don't have that nasty nail polish on anymore. I can bite my fingernails. Or they used to give alcoholics a medication that would make them vomit if they tasted alcohol, but they know they're on the medication. So it's a little bit difficult. Okay. So you want them to associate the unwanted behavior with an unpleasant feeling. It's not great, again, for years after because people remember that it was just nail polish or it was just medication. Okay. So again, we're mapping out how that would work for aversion therapy with alcohol. So you have the unconditioned stimulus, the drug, and the unconditioned response is nausea. And you're going to pair, via classical conditioning, the neutral stimulus of alcohol with the drug, and hopefully get the neutral stimulus to become your conditioned stimulus. Okay, so again, behavior modification, reinforcing desired behaviors and withholding reinforcement for undesired ones. So for little kids, you could do the token economy thing, give them some kind of reward for exhibiting a desired behavior, and they can later use that reward to get treats. So you think about when you were in first grade and your teacher had like big bucks or something, and when you pushed in your chair and cleaned off your desk and waited quietly in line, you got big bucks, and maybe at like the end of the month you got to use the big bucks to go buy fun erasers or things like that. That's a token economy. So criticism, I'm not really sure how durable these behaviors are. I would argue that none of your classmates really know how to stand in a line anymore. And is it ethical to try for one human to determine what behavior is desirable and what behavior is not desirable? Something to think about. Okay, you won't have to do the assignment because I'm trying to just spare you guys assignments right now. So I miss you. I hope you are safe. Be good, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.